Hi again, everybody. Welcome into an all-new edition of No Holding Back. It's our hockey edition. Fred Pletsch with me as always. Freddie, how are you?
I'm good today. Thanks, Ben.
You too. And Brian Riley in the bottom of our screen has been kind enough to join us, the head coach at Army. Brian, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on, guys. Definitely look forward to talking to you. It's always good to talk hockey, right?
It is, man. And, joking before we started, I've been up there 8 years doing football. And more times than not is, for those that don't know, the practice field for football is right across from Tate Rink. And usually, whether it was Feely or Kevin O'Connell or Tom Bradley, they'd be like, where'd Benny go? And those that knew me, Matt Faulkner and Allie and the late, great Ryan Janaszak would be like, he's got to be over at the rink. I always come over and say hi to you, and it's great to do this with you. So what's the latest and greatest in your world? What are you doing in these times that we're all living in right now, Brian?
Well, first of all, we all know you're a hockey guy, so that's why you find your way over here to the rink, right? Like,
yes.
Really think you're a football guy, but I know better, and it's always great to have you here. We're just doing what everyone else is doing right now, living in this world of Zoom, and most importantly, staying connected with your team, right? And we've done a good job with that, and just making sure, obviously school's still going on, making sure that they're hitting the books. And from a physical standpoint, at some point they're going to come back and be student athletes. So from a hockey standpoint, they've got to be in shape. And even from a military standpoint, they're going to have to be in shape. So just making sure that they're working out. And lastly, just making sure from a mental standpoint that, that they're able to kind of handle what's going on, and hopefully all is well with their families. So it's just finding a way to continue to be connected with your players.
That's good stuff. And I'm going to let Fred kind of start a little retrospective here, as he likes to do on these interviews we've done with coaches and players. And, we've gotten some really good stories, and I know you've got a bunch. So, Freddie, I'll let you fire away for a bit.
Well, thanks for joining us, Brian. And, hockey people recognize the USHL now as a junior league. That's the top developmental league for college players in this country. But you go back, and it was a semi-pro league. It was a senior league. At one point, it was kind of a hybrid league as they made the transition. And I know you played in it. And when you talk NHL scouts in the Midwest, NHL scouts out in Minnesota, Jack Barzee was the legendary NHL scout, and you played for Jack. Tell us, coming out of prep school, how you found yourself in Waterloo, Iowa.
Wow, well that certainly brings back great memories. So I was in prep school at the time, playing for Mike McShane up at New Hampton, and he had put together an unbelievable. I mean, he would load up every year with postgrads, and so I wasn't sure where I was going to go after that. And my brother Rob was at BC, was roommates with Walt Kyle. Well, Walt Kyle is from Waterloo, Iowa, right? Yeah. So here's the connection. So Walt tells my brother, "Hey, you should have Brian come out and play in Waterloo. I'll put him in touch with Jack Barzee." And so I'll never forget the day. Actually, my roommate from New Hampton, Ronnie Millardo, and I went out to Waterloo together. I'll never forget the day we were leaving, and my mom just kind of looking and basically saying to my dad, "Are we really letting him go to Waterloo, Iowa?" And
on Kyle's recommendation.
Yeah. So out we went, right? And that was the last year when it was a senior league. And I'm there the first week, and I have guys showing me how to fight, and I'm not a fighter. So I was like, what the heck did I get into? But what a great experience playing in that league, and obviously playing against older guys. Jack Barzee was a great coach and just a real character. But again, for setting me up for success, or putting me in a position to play college hockey, it allowed me to take that next step and end up at Brown University. But 1 year in Waterloo, it was a great time.
So you go to Brown, and as you look at and we'll get into the history with your father, obviously, but as I look at the coaches, Brian, at the time you played in the ECAC, Bill O'Flaherty at Clarkson, Len Siglarski, Charlie Holt, Jack Parker, Fernie Flaman, Bill Cleary, Tim Taylor, Mike Odessa, down the list. It's a who's who, isn't it, of American college coaches?
Absolutely. I think when people talk about some of the greatest coaches in college hockey, certainly out on the East Coast, like all those guys that you mentioned. But I was very lucky growing up, like back in those days, when my dad would play a team here at West Point, like after the game, they would come over to our house. You know, so I had known all these coaches on a personal level. Now, I think when my dad got beat, maybe he didn't invite him over, right? But when he won, he certainly did. And so to have those guys in your living room was just a neat experience growing up. And when I played against them and lined up, you know, I knew all of those coaches. And so it was pretty neat to be able to sit in a living room after a game with my dad and say, Tim Taylor, and just listen to them talk about the game. And pretty neat. Like, I don't know if you would see that now, although I guess it's changed. I think you could possibly see that now. But obviously teams travel right after games. And so, but it was a really neat experience getting to know many of those coaches that you just spoke about.
So your college career ends, I'm assuming you pretty much knew that coaching was in your blood. You were going to become a coach, and a D3, or I guess at that point it was a D2 school, SUNY Plattsburgh, and you know, a highly regarded program at that time. So
obviously my mom probably thought going to an Ivy League school I was going to be a doctor or a lawyer, right? But that didn't pan out for her, and I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do. I actually looked at maybe trying to get involved with the CIA or the FBI for a while, but I don't think they picked me, so I mustn't have passed the first test. But you know, coaching, I felt, was something that would keep me close to the game, right? And when you coach, you're still involved in the highs and lows. So I had actually gone out to coach with Jack Barzee, who had since moved from Waterloo to Dubuque. And then I got a call to go play hockey in Spain. And, you know, I remember going to Jack, and he was like, you got to go. And I thought, all right, well, I took some Spanish in high school. I bet I could go over there and rattle off a couple words. But I went over there, and let me tell you what, like, they talk too fast. Eventually, I just got to, what's up? That's all I would say to everybody. But a great opportunity to get over to a place and travel around that country. And then I came back, and my dad's assistant at the time, Steve Hoare, who was a phenomenal recruiter, got the head coaching job at Plattsburgh, and he said, hey, do you want to come up? And so I went up there, and I don't know if he had worked it out with the AD. I don't think he did, because one day he had me sign my contract in the parking lot, and the AD was coming out of the athletic building. He says, hey, duck, like he can't see you. So I think I signed a $500 contract. I got to live in the dorm, but a great hockey town, like Plattsburgh. Like I was blown away by how much people had a passion for hockey. So that was a great experience for me, being able to coach some unbelievably talented players, and kind of got me really into college hockey.
Yeah, really an underrated brand of hockey at that time, was it not?
Absolutely. Like we went out, like we beat D1 teams. We went out and swept Alaska. Like we wouldn't shy away from playing D1 teams. I remember we came down here to play Army, and I think we went up like 5-0. And I remember looking over at the bench and seeing my dad and my brother. I'm like, man, this isn't really fun. Like, I'm supposed to go to the house afterwards. This isn't going to be very enjoyable. I was kind of, next thing you know, we're in overtime and the ref calls a goddamn penalty on us, which I still don't know what happened. And sure enough, they scored in overtime. I almost ripped my brother's arm off going through the handshake line. So they kind of got the last laugh. We did stop at the house. I don't think I said too much, but yeah, we were able to play against, you know, back then you could play D1 teams as well. So just a great experience.
I know you spent a year at Lowell and then reunited with Rob. Was that kind of preordained? Did you have to think about that?
Oh, absolutely not. Like I couldn't believe when Rob called me and said, "Hey, would you be interested to come to West Point?" I'm like, never in my wildest dreams could I imagine getting opportunity to coach, you know, at West Point. And so, like, I don't know if I told him I would work for nothing or like I would walk there. Like, yeah. So it was unbelievable to have the opportunity to come back to West Point. And you know what? Family's everything. And to be on the bench with your brother and enjoy the highs of winning and be there to help each other get through the lows of losing. I could have been his assistant for my whole college hockey career.
Mm-hmm. Brian, what are some of your earliest recollections of going to West Point? When's the first time you recall going there?
Like to like growing up here,
yeah.
So,
growing up.
I mean, growing up here, it was awesome because we lived on the coach's loop. Like, you know, we're next door neighbors with Bobby Knight. We're next door neighbors with Coach K. We have Coach Parcells in our loop. So just we had our own football team, the Bartlett Loop Bears. You know, we'd travel around West Point and say, all right, hey, who wants to play us? And just having the opportunity, like West Point is kind of a fantasy world here, you know, and to live here and to grow up and be surrounded by cadets. Like I can remember as a kid in football season, all of us would come up in the morning on a Saturday and we would clean the stadium and put the 50 flags up and we'd get $3 and a kid's ticket to sit in the kiddie section of a football game. I remember Coach Cahill was the head coach and his son, Dougie, was my best friend. They're playing Syracuse, a fight breaks out, and we didn't realize at the time, but the headsets were right next to us. Oh. And we were probably saying things that were inappropriate because I think it was the next day, Coach Cahill got the both of us together and was like, "Hey, so what do you guys think of the game?" And we're like, "Oh, it was great," you know. And when they had the fight, he goes, "So what were you guys doing during the fight?" And we're like, "Oh, we were just watching." He's like, "So you had nothing to say about it?" And we're like, "No." He goes, "Well, next time you ought to be a little bit more careful because the headphones were there and heard everything you two yahoos were saying." But and going out to like when they used to do preseason football, it was out at Camp Buckner.
Really?
So going out there and filling up the Gatorade cups for the guys, and then of course the hockey piece. Waking up early Saturday morning, walking to the rink, playing in maybe a peewee game, and if I was lucky, they'd play me in the Bantam game. And then the plebes would play at 1 o'clock. And then the junior team, which was the high school team, would play at 3. And then I'd be there for my dad's game, which started at 8, just kind of living at the rink. I mean, it was an awesome childhood growing up here.
How long have you had a key to that rink then?
Oh, but it's funny you say that because on my desk, I have an old key that somebody gave me to Smith Rink. So yeah, like it's, I've been going, obviously it's not Smith Rink anymore, but I spent a lot of time in the rink, whether it be Smith Rink or now Tate Rink. I mean, this was home.
Freddie.
Obviously, Brian, a family legacy that may never be replicated ever again. I mean, one family was 68 years behind the bench. I'm always intrigued by the forgotten miracle. You know, this year was the 50th anniversary of the Miracle on Ice, but it was 70 years ago, the forgotten miracle when Jack McCartan in goal, that huge upset in Squaw Valley, and your dad coached that. When did you I know you're only a year old, 1960. Yeah. When did you become aware of the significance of that?
Well, every time that I went down into the basement. So in our basement, on one wall, my dad would have all of his Army team picture. Another wall, he had a picture with himself and his captains. And over on the other side of the basement was the Olympic wall, where he had the pictures of the Olympics. And so, you know what? People would always come over the house, like my friends would come over the house. We'd go downstairs and, you know, naturally they're looking at all the pictures. And it was inevitable that every time somebody came in, they said, "Hey, where's the gold medal?" And I'm like, "You guys really want to see the gold medal?" And they're like, "Yeah." So I would go upstairs. My dad kept his gold medal in his top drawer underneath his t-shirts. And I would take it out, bring it down, show him. And actually, he wasn't even supposed to have a gold medal. And his manager, after they won, at some point, Jim Claypool called him up and was like, "Hey, Jack, they want the gold medal back." And my dad said, "Hey, Jim, you can tell them I threw the gold medal in the goddamn Hudson River. Like, they are not getting that gold medal back." So, I mean, just always heard stories. And actually, you know, the Olympic team trained here. And it's funny, as I look at the stories of Coach Brooks, and I'm like, well, he's just like my dad. Like, my dad brought him here to train him. The rink here was 236 feet long. Wow. And so he said, "Hey, we may not win a damn game, but we're going to be the best conditioned team over there." So they trained here. Well, everyone knows the story. My dad's last cut was Coach Brooks. And so when I'm a young coach going out to Minnesota, all of a sudden one day I see Coach Brooks and he calls me over. And of course he's holding court. And I'm like, well, this isn't going to be good for me. Like, so I sit down and he goes, "Hey, you guys know this is Jack's younger son, Brian." And he goes, "Did I ever tell you the story about getting cut from the Olympic team?" And I'm like, "Oh, Jesus. Like, why couldn't this be my brother Rob here instead of me?" But he goes, "So Coach Riley called me in and said, 'Hey, Herb, you're one of the youngest guys we have. You don't have the international experience that some of the other guys have. So, you know what? I'm going to have to send you home.'" And so Coach Brooks said he went out. He called his dad, and his dad said, "Hey, Herb, you get in there, you thank Coach Riley for the opportunity, and you get back here because you're going to be at work on Monday." So he did that. He said they're watching the last game against the Czechs. And obviously, if the U.S. wins, they win the gold medal. Buzzer goes off. U.S. wins. They win the gold medal. Coach Brooks' dad looks at him and says, "Hey, Herb, I guess Coach Riley made the right choice, didn't he?" And so, I mean, I heard that story more than once, but you can imagine the first time I was really scared, like, because I didn't know what the heck he was going to say about my dad.
Wow. Can you share what he did, or what did he say?
Oh no. So he always, and even my dad, like, two guys that were really, really similar and didn't care what anyone thought about them. Right. Like,
yeah.
But a lot of the same passion for the conditioning piece, and both of them just, I think, had an unbelievable competitive fire. Like, the more people told them that they couldn't win, like, my dad told me this story about a guy who wrote an article in the newspaper, and my dad, you know, all bashing him and saying they're never going to win, and when they won the gold medal, my dad said he called him at 3 a.m. I'm not going to tell you what he said to him on the phone, and then slammed the phone down. But again, I think both were really, really similar, and both had the utmost respect. Like, even though my dad cut Coach Brooks, you know what? He was very respectful. I mean, they got along and often shared stories. So it was pretty neat to see the two of those guys together.
I bet.
I want to find out more about that rink that was 236
Yeah. So growing up as a kid, like we were doing cross ice before cross ice was even cool. Like they put fire hoses across both blue lines. And so they would have, when I first started, we would have 3 games going cross ice. And you know what? Then as we got a little older, they had a house league and it would be half ice. But you can imagine when I would be there and see these teams come in to play Army, and you step into the rink and all you could say was, oh my God, because you just looked down and it was like, you know, it was like skating on the ocean. But that's why back then, like my dad's team, from a conditioning standpoint, like I would get off the bus from school and my dad would have me get dressed. And back then they did a lot of scrimmaging, or they worked on the power play. So if they were scrimmaging and the puck went down one end, he would always tell me, hey, skate as quick as you can across the ice. You know, and it was like amazing to be on the ice while their practice was going on, because it was such a big rink that I didn't have to worry about guys running into me.
Did you ever see any other rinks in the country or the world with dimensions like that?
Like I had heard that the Smith rink was the second largest rink in North America. Like I don't know, the Hudson River might have been the longest rink. I don't know, but I never saw anything like the room behind the net. I'll never forget as a kid watching Army beat BU after BU had won the national championship the year before. The Army guy, actually John Roberts from War Road, Minnesota, shot the puck from the goal line. He was clearing the puck and the BU goalie had lost his stick and he went down on all fours and it went right through his legs. And Army upset, you know, BU, like I said, which had won the national championship the year before. I remember after the game because my dad had everyone over, but putting a note on his pillow, well done, Dad. So, yeah, great memories.
Awesome stuff. So take us through the time that you spent there with your brother and highlights and things that happened and that you still remember clear as they happened yesterday.
Yeah. So like I said, I mean, I was very fortunate to be raised in a close-knit family. Like, my dad's an amazing coach, but my mom was the best mom that you could ever ask for. And we just had this tight-knit family. Like we were competitive. Like we'd fight each other out playing wiffle ball or street hockey. But to have an opportunity to come and work with like my best friend was something I could never have imagined. And I'll never forget, I had come from Lowell and we weren't allowed on the ice yet. And I remember the cadets had just started skating. And I remember in our first game was against Lowell.
Oh.
I remember looking at my brother going, Rob, like, we are going to get our asses kicked. You know, like he goes, hey, trust me, these guys will be ready. And he was right. Like we wound up winning that game 3-0. And that just kind of, which I had already known, but it just kind of validated to me, like, you know what, the bigger the underdog cadets are, watch out. Like you tell them that they can't do something, watch out. So that was really neat to, again, be on the bench with these cadets and my brother and to experience some. We had gone to another story. I was assistant coach, obviously, with Rob. We go to Cambridge to play Harvard. Harvard's raising their banner from winning their national championship. Obviously, they were counting on winning, and we weren't expected to win, but even had to kill like a 6-on-3 at the end. But we wound up winning, and I can just remember hugging my brother, like, and then I remember going and calling home to my mom and dad and telling, hey, we just beat Harvard. They raised their banner, and so many memories like that. You know, even growing up as a kid, so my dad coaches the U.S. team to a gold medal. He's got all these wins. And I'm saying to myself, why does Dad stay at West Point? Like, why doesn't he go to BC or BU? Like, he's a big Boston guy, was a great player at Dartmouth with his brothers. I'm like, now, having sat kind of where he sat, I know why he stayed. You know, the chance to coach cadets and more importantly, be around them on a daily basis makes this the most rewarding and humbling job in all of sports. I don't care what anybody says. When you are out on the patio of this rink on graduation day and your cadets come over and you see them commissioned as second lieutenants, and to know that you as a coach in some small way have to shape and develop them to be future leaders and lead this nation's sons and daughters, now I know why my dad stayed. Like,
Yeah.
nothing better.
I've heard Jeff Monken say that for the, obviously him and I built a relationship.
Yep.
And he's like, I never served in the military, but I feel like I'm serving here.
No, absolutely. Like, hey, I tell people, and if you saw, like, I wear 2 KIA bracelets, right? We've had 2 players that have been killed in action.
Yep.
I'm not afraid to lose. Like I don't like to lose. My biggest fear would be, like, I only have 2 wrists, right? My biggest fear would be to lose a player. And Major Tom Kennedy and First Lieutenant Derek Hines, both killed in Afghanistan, both unbelievable leaders here at West Point. And I've learned so much from them as far as how leadership goes. And I really believe that one of my most important jobs at West Point is to make sure that their legacy lives on. So when I have the chance to talk about a TK or a Heinze, and I've talked to numerous NHL teams, I talked to some of the Atlantic Falcons last year. I talked to college teams. It's really, really important for me to make sure that their legacy lives on.
Well, I did a lot of things when I worked for the CCHA, but one of the things I'm most proud of, Brian, is in concert with you, instituting the Derek Hines Unsung Hero Award. And let me just read the charge of that award, because I brought it up here. To the player who displays exemplary sportsmanship, is supremely competitive, intelligent, and extraordinarily conditioned with an unmatched work ethic. And I know, talking to you and to Derek's dad, one of the things that I'm most proud of is helping be a part of starting that award.
No, I think it is so important, and now there is a lot of respect for the military. Like back when I played, that maybe there wasn't as much respect for the military, but now throughout college hockey, when teams come in here to play, they do have a lot of respect for the military, and I think that's great. And like we talked about legacy, to have Heinze's name attached to this award, because he is the type of son that all of us would love to have. He is a type of teammate that anybody who plays college hockey would have loved to have had. I mean, he just embodied everything that was good about a person. And I think all of us have been in locker rooms. There's so many Derek Hineses in there that are just outstanding young men and women who just, I think, represent this sport in the right way. And so I'm just so appreciative, Fred, of people like you that kind of got together and said, hey, you know what? This is pretty important. And to have an award that bears his name, to me, again, that allows his legacy to live on. I always look forward to calling the winners each year and telling them, who Derek Hines was. And I always tell them, like, you may win a lot more awards in your life, but I can think of none that is more important than the Derek Hines Award.
I know you mentioned Derek. You would be proud to have Derek as a son, and I know your son Jack played college hockey at Mercyhurst, and you coached against him. And whenever you talk to coaches and they have a player whose father is a coach, they always, he's a coach's son. You can tell he's a coach's son. He does all these little things right. So tell me about coaching against your son in the college ranks. It's easy to say, I hope he gets 3 and we win 6-3.
But so actually then Brendan ended up there too. And Brendan just graduating this year, but like I can remember all of us played against my dad. So Jay played at Harvard, Mark and Rob at BC. I was at Brown. And we all came back to West Point to play against my dad, and we always wanted to, do well to make him proud. Hell, I never scored against my dad. Now that I think about it, actually, I separated my shoulder one year. They were chasing me around, but that's what I told Jack. I'm like, Jack, the first time we play, I said, Jack, you better keep your head up. And he's like, Dad, like Army's my favorite team. Like other than, I said, I know, Jack. I said, but they can't hit me. So the next best thing to hitting me is hitting you. So keep your damn head up, and so I remember the first time, like I kind of caught myself like watching him every time he was out there, and we played against him so many times. He had a 4-point night in here, 2 goals, 2 assists. He had the last time he played in here, and Brendan was on the team. One of my biggest highlights that I'll ever have, the starting lineup, starting at left wing, number 3 from West Point, New York, Jack Riley. I think that's starting at right wing, number 6, Brendan Riley from West Point, New York. And of course, my wife's family, they're no doubt who they were cheering for, right? Like they're making all sorts of noise. First shift, Brendan shoots an off-angle shot, goes in. I remember thinking, all right, Brendan, good for you. Like that's pretty cool. Your first time playing here. Now I hope we run it up on him a little bit. Well, second, and of course, Jack an assist on that goal, but second goal, Jack Riley. Third goal, Jack Riley. Fourth goal, Jack Riley. I'm like, so the game ends, of course, we lost. And I remember going through the line and I'm like, hey, Jack and Brendan, you ever think about doing this against Frank at Air Force and not against your dad? So it was a neat experience because you're on the bench and even though you said it, Fred, like if he did have 3 goals, like that's awesome. I was hoping we were going to have at least 4, but it's just so neat to see your sons living out their dream. It's hard to play Division I college hockey, and to see them doing that and to see them doing it here in the rink that they grew up in, just a really, really proud parent moment. And I did want to beat their ass, but you know what? Like, I think we've had the better laugh here lately, but there was a stretch there where I think Jack and I bet the loser would cut the grass. Like he didn't have to cut much grass. So I was doing the cutting of the grass.
Yeah. Well, Brian, excuse me, I'm curious. So was there a point at all where Jack or Brendan wanted to go to West Point, or was that out of the equation?
No, you know what? Like whether or not it was the right fit, I think they all, just like us growing up, like West Point's such a small area. And I think we wanted to prove that like I'm talking about my brothers and I and my sister, even though like she would say she's the best hockey player of the bunch. We wanted to prove that we could go away from West Point and not necessarily, say, hey, all right, he's playing for his dad. He's on the ice because his dad's a coach. And I think Brendan and Jack had that as well. And yet I would call them and they maybe say, and of course they watched every Army football game that was on TV when they weren't, I'd call them during the winter, hey, Dad, like we're listening to the men's basketball game, or the spring, hey, Dad, we've got the lacrosse game up. I mean, just diehard Army fans, then and now.
So tell us about the rivalry on the ice with Air Force. Frank Serratori told us that only the cadets from Air Force could look at the other end of the ice at their Air Force counterparts and understand what they have to go through to be Division I hockey players and vice versa.
Absolutely. I think a word that you would add to the Army Air Force rivalry is special. So for that reason, there's only 2, but it looks like maybe there'll be a 3rd team coming soon, Service Academy. So like Frank said, like only the cadets here can understand what the cadets at Air Force are going through. And ultimately, someday they're going to be on the same team. You know, I mean, we try to beat the hell out of each other for, 120 minutes or whatever on a weekend. But then after the game, if you ever saw an Army Air Force game, you will see the seniors from both teams line up on the blue lines, intermingled, and the other players behind them, same thing. And they play the alma maters. And it's like you don't see that at North Dakota and Minnesota or BU and BC. And then even after the game, like, we will go and have dinner together, whether it be in Kimsey, Ben, or out at Air Force in there. They have a big area. So it's just really, really special and something that's different. I've been in their locker room and congratulated them on wins, and because I truly, truly understand what they're going through, but more than that, I truly, truly respect the fact that they are at a service academy.
Yeah. Well, the first time I ever came to West Point, Brian, was an Army Air Force game, 2008. And my buddy Cody Amalusik scored the winner that night from Traverse City. But, I mean, going back to what you were talking about earlier, I mean, I got goosebumps because I've said for years, Fred, have you been to West Point ever?
I have not.
It is the most powerful place I've ever been to cover a sporting event. And I don't do anything but go there for that. I've toured it. I went around. I've met great people like Brian and Joe Albarisi, the lacrosse coach, and all the football coaches and numerous cadets. And it gives me goosebumps just thinking and talking and hearing you talk about when you were talking about Derek. So one thing I wanted to ask you, I'm sure there's probably countless stories, Brian, of you mentioned how back years ago, it didn't seem like the military was as appreciated. I think I'm guessing that probably changed when 9/11 hit. Am I accurate in that?
Yes.
So can you give us some examples of, X team coming up to you or one of your players, something that just stuck with you, that just gripped you, that they said about you guys?
No, so like I said, like back in the 70s when my dad was part of his coaching, when during the Vietnam War, holy smokes, like some of the stories I heard from my dad when Army was on the ice and people taunting them, and so time obviously changed, and after 9/11 and even prior to that, I wanted to have NHL teams come here and just kind of hopefully leave here having a greater appreciation for the men and women that serve. Mm-hmm. And it has been, I mean, it has worked, tenfold. These NHL players come in here and they are just so respectful and appreciative of what these cadets do. By the time they leave here, for our players, like, they're their idols. But the NHL players, when they leave here, our players are their idols. And, perfect example, this year, we played AIC, and I didn't know it was going to be the last game. It was our last regular season game, so we were honoring our seniors. And as we do on senior night, kind of like we do with Air Force, we have all our seniors step out on the blue line and face the flag. And we play our alma mater with our players behind them. Well, AIC stayed out on the ice and lined up on their blue line. Yep. And when they were done playing the alma mater, the AIC guys were all banging their sticks for our guys. Like it just, I don't know. I mean, that will always stick with me, and I've gone through numerous handshake lines of guys saying, especially when they're seniors, hey, Coach Riley, it has been awesome competing against you. So much respect for your players. So it's pretty neat. And when we're in a rink, especially an away rink, and they play the national anthem, and all our guys are always at attention. And hockey, some guys like pros have the ability to move around, and our guys don't move.
Right.
You can always feel all the eyes in the rink kind of like, look at those guys, pretty neat. That's when you know as a coach that you are at a special place and you are coaching special people.
Yep, no doubt about it. 100%. So I want to ask you about, so Zach McKelvey's on your staff, right?
Yes. Yep.
So we all remember Dan Hino, and I loved
Yes.
him as a player. He's a former West Pointer and played in the program there. And now you have another young guy that recently got an opportunity.
Yeah.
And in these situations, basically, to put a blanket on it, it's a case-by-case scenario. We had 3 guys drafted last week at the NFL draft. But talk to us about Dominic Franco and what that means to him and your program.
Yeah. Well, first of all, like, I think this is a win-win for everybody, right? You know, I don't care if you're a football player, lacrosse player, hockey player, like especially hockey guys, like every hockey recruit that I've had in here, hey coach, you know, what a chance of playing pro. Like I want to play pro. Like everybody has that dream and you never want to squash that dream. And now with, you know, how this has worked out with this new policy that will allow them the opportunity to play and then serve their time afterwards. Just think about it. So Dom signs, you know, with the Buffaloes organization, will probably be in Rochester.
Yep.
The stories that will be told, you know, people will be talking to him about West Point. I mean, you can't pay for that type of publicity. And yet he's going to come back and serve. And I think his experience of being a pro athlete is going to make him even a better officer for what he's gone through. And I mean, obviously for Dom, 6'5", right? Can't teach 6'5". And but the thing about him is not only is he a big player, but he's got skill and he has really, really high level of hockey IQ. So I'm really excited. I know the players in our program are excited. I know the players coming into our program are excited because now everybody knows you can come to West Point, and if you are good enough, you will be seen. And if you are good enough, then there'll be an opportunity presented to you. So this is just great for Dom and great for our program, and I think it's great for the academy as well.
And the reason I brought up Zach is because you can obviously correct me if I'm wrong. I believe he was the last player that did that, right?
Yeah, but it was different policy then. He had to not play. Like he had to sit out for 2 years. So I mean, think about that. Like he was in the Army and training. And I mean, I remember Boston Bruins GM, assistant GM in my office right here. Hey, we got to have this kid. I mean, Zach he was an amazing young man as a player. He's an amazing young man as a coach. But for the Bruins to obviously believe in, hey, even though he hasn't played in 2 years, we're going to sign this kid. I think speaks volumes about what they thought about him, not only as a player, but as a person.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, it's what's the slogan? The greatest leaders in America come out of West Point, right? Or something to that effect. I should know this after 8 years, but I mean, I'm thinking of that, you know, if you get the chance with like Dominic and like I said with Zach, I mean, you want to talk about leadership, you're going to have to look long and hard to find somebody, whether it's at your school, and you may not like this, but another academy, but we're on the same team. I mean, to me, that's where it ends because they are incredible leaders.
But just so you know, Ben, the saying is this: much of who we learn about in history, we're taught here at West Point. So next year in football, you will have that down pat, right? Like premier leadership institution in the world.
That's what it is.
Like that's what this place. I mean, that's what it does. Like, I mean, our locker room is full of leaders, but they are developing those leadership skills every day they're at West Point because they're going to have to lead. They're going to have to lead this nation's sons and daughters. And so, you know what? Actually, a lot of our players come here, I think, because they understand value of education. They understand, hey, D1 hockey, that's their dream. The military piece, they don't know that much about. And I always tell them in the recruiting process, hey, you've been playing this ultimate team sport your whole life. The Army is the ultimate team, right? So So being a hockey player and being on a hockey team, you will have no problem, being on this big team, the U.S. Army. And so by the time our guys graduate from here, you know what? They are ready to lead. And Zack McKelvey, one of the best leaders I've ever seen come through here. And Dom has had the ability to work on his leadership skills. And I know it's going to make him, put him in a position to be successful at his next stop here.
I know, I get the impression talking to you, Brian, just kind of reinforced that you're maybe not a glass half full, but a glass 3/4 full. When Ivy League schools go to scout a junior game, they're crossing off, maybe half the players just because of academics.
Yeah.
And I can see what happens with you. You're probably looking at maybe 1-2 people per team, right? That you
Absolutely.
even shot
Yeah,
at.
Fred, you're spot on with that. Like we go into a rink and some teams can watch, all 40 players. Ivy Leagues, like maybe they're watching 10. Service Academy, maybe they're watching 4 because again, the academic piece, the character piece, leadership qualities, and then the military piece. Like the majority of our guys that we talk to, like our locker room, we have one player whose dad came here, and played hockey here. So he obviously knew about West Point. Every single other one of them was probably the first time Zack McKelvey talked to him was like, I never really thought about the military, right? So,
yeah.
But I'll tell you this, and to Ben's point about coming to West Point, we feel very strongly, if we can get them to come and see West Point, like I'll tell you what, we have not got every person that has come here, but when they leave here, they leave here with a greater appreciation and respect because, I mean, what I call down below in the main area, I mean, people like George Washington, Grant, Lee, Eisenhower, Patton, like you can feel the history and tradition of the place. And I always say you can judge a school's commitment to academics and athletics by their facilities. Well, guess what? Like you come here, you won't want for anything, but you are spot on with that, Fred. Like we go to the let's say any type of showcase, we're not watching as many players as most other Division I college hockey league. That's for sure.
Has to make it that much more satisfying when you find that special person that you're looking for and know that you're going to play a part in molding them into a leader of the nation over the next 4 years.
Oh, it's like I said, most rewarding and humbling coaching job. I have the best job in all of sports. Like I always hear people say, "Oh, I've got the best job," and 2 years later they're going to a different place for more money or whatever. Like, are you kidding me? Like, I get to, like, every day, obviously not now, but when the cadets walk by my office, it's like, that's the best time of the day. Like, just to be around these young men. And when you recruit a new class, like we have a new class, I feel terrible about our class graduating because I'm going to miss them. Like, love those guys. But they will always be part of the Army hockey family, and they know that. But now we have a new class getting ready to come in, and it's going to be great to be part of that process to help shape and develop them and grow to love those guys like we do all of our guys in our room.
That's
it's good. This is great stuff, man. Freddie, you got anything else?
No, I'm good. This has been enlightening and quite enjoyable.
We got to get you to West Point, man, to a game.
Yes, Freddie, we got to get you up here.
It's incredible, man.
I do have one kind of humorous anecdote for you. When my son was playing juniors up in Canada, there were recruiters from both Air Force and Army games. I forget which one, because his hometown was listed as Canton, Michigan. So they thought he was an American, which he now is. He's naturalized. But I remember one of the recruiters, Ted saying, "Well, I'm actually Canadian," and he said, "Did you tell I think it was the Air Force guy there. He goes, no, I don't think it. He said, well, don't tell him. Let him waste his time.
No, you know what? I mean, over the years with Air Force, like obviously we want to beat each other, but how can you not respect the guys in that room? You know, and so if somebody tells me they're not coming to West Point, but they're going to Air Force, like, what am I going to say? Like, you're making a mistake? Like, no. I wish him the best of luck, and know that he signed on to serve his country. Like, but we do have a great rivalry, but we also do have a great deal of respect for each other.
And you'll also point out the sign that will be in your ring. Thanks for doing your job sitting down.
Yeah, cheer for us.
That's fun.
No, we have fun. We have fun with each other. No.
I've learned a lot about that rivalry in football, and she's pretty hot in football.
Well,
man.
theirs is different than ours. Like, you know what? I don't think you would see the Army Air Force football teams getting together afterwards and eating dinner together, much less being, lining up together to hear the alma maters.
For whatever reason, and we won't get into it any deeper, the Army-Navy rivalry is like you're talking in your rivalry with hockey. But in football, man, she's a different animal, man.
Oh, for sure. For sure. I don't think they even mention each other's names when they're talking about playing each other. Maybe I'll do that with Frank. I'm not going to mention his name like the other guy, but no. Hey, this has been awesome. Like being able to share stories, and Fred, just the fact that you researched the Waterloo Blackhawk deal with Jack Barzy, and certainly brought back a lot of memories.
Thanks for sharing them. Much appreciated.
Yeah, Brian, always a pleasure talking with you, and keep up the great work, and you guys stay safe and all those great things up there. And we really appreciate you doing this, and it means a lot to us too. Thanks for what you all do for our country.
Well, thanks for having me. And both you guys are tremendous advocates for college hockey. Appreciate all you guys do, and look forward to seeing both of you in a rink here, hopefully real soon.
Well, hopefully I'll be over at practice and I'll sneak over.
You can come over anytime.
I know that. I appreciate that. That's all been Army head coach Brian Riley joining us here on No Holding Back. For Fred Pletsch, Ben Holden, thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time for an all-new edition.